Hi everybody! I've had absolutely tons of questions from you all asking about the torches that I use. So I thought I would do a little video running through them. I have done a couple of reviews on different torches in the past. Some of them I know some of you've seen before and you've questioned me about, but I realised I haven't really done reviews on the ones that I use day in and day out, which are the ones you tend to see in the videos. So I'm going to go into this properly in a bit, but just as a super quick answer, the one I use all the time for 99% of stuff and I've been using for, I don't know, about 15 years is the Go System Butane Propane Mix Gas and the Go System Finetech Nozzle. This is the same nozzle that you see, for those of you who follow Kernowcraft, that you see in the Kernowcraft catalogue. Absolutely love it. But we're going to start with micro torches. So this is the one that started sparking all the questions again, because I swapped this one recently for a lot of the videos, and quite rightly a lot of you presumed it's because I preferred the torch, when in reality it's just because the flame's a lot smaller, so it's less likely to make the camera keep focusing in and out every time you use it. Because when back at the beginning of Make It Month 12, when I was using this torch a lot, for anyone who's been following the project, you'll remember that every time I was doing soldering, the camera was just gaining focus and losing focus all the time because of the size of the flame. It tends to happen a lot less with this because the flame is so tiny and defined, which I'll show you in a minute. I bought these because I was running a jewellery workshop in a pub and I didn't want to set fire to the pub, so I thought everybody should have teeny tiny torches rather than the bigger ones, and it was just great, so I've bought loads of them now. And that's one of the things to remember as well, although in the photo I posted a minute ago I have a lot of torches, you've got to remember I teach over 100 students every single term and it's normally new students, so I need a lot of torches. But also some of them have been trial and error, so when I've been looking for something that's either a bit bigger or a bit smaller, or some of them I've had since I started out over 20 years ago, you don't need all these different ones. And like I say, this one I use 99% of the time. The only reason I'm not using it quite as much at the minute is purely because this one can be a little bit better for the videos. So if you're only going to get one, I would get this one. Like I say, I'm going to do a proper demo with it in a little bit. I currently have three different micro torches, sorry, I have a lot more than three. The one I use most is a 901. 901 torch. It's got written on it, but to be honest, I see this torch everywhere under slightly different names. It's just a generic kitchen creme brulee type torch. £9 on eBay, on Amazon, anywhere like that. I actually really like it because the flame is very defined and it's easy to turn it on and off, and it gives you relatively intuitive control, whereas the Dremel is about £30, and although the flame is even more defined again, which I say I'll show you in a minute, it is such a nightmare to turn on and off. It's so unintuitive that it can become dangerous for students because they're so busy trying to sort of press and prod every button that they don't concentrate on whether or not there's a flame. And this one's sort of middle of the range, so this is called a Masterclass, which is the brand, and it's one of the professional torches, but again it's just a kitchen torch, a creme brulee one. I have had over the years the ones you'll see in the various jewellery suppliers, so there's a little black one, black all over, that's very popular with the jewellery suppliers, and there's one that looks an awful lot like this, which I think is around £40 compared to this one, which is about 20. And one of them I found quite difficult to fill with gas, but that just might have been my torch, and you know, it's from a long time ago. And one of the other ones I had some technical difficulties with it and it started acting like a flamethrower. So it is important to regular maintenance, read the instructions, look after things. If you drop them, either check them over or consider replacing them before you light it again. I've just turned the light off so that you can see the flame a lot better, and I've just popped something over my eyes so I've got a little bit of protection. I know a lot of people solder and use torches without glasses or goggles on, but I just like to have something over my eyes. So starting with the 901 torch. The first thing is it's got a slider on the side, which is the same as the slider that you would maybe get with a lighter, for anyone who's used those before. So it changes the size of the flame. It needs to be up full whack, so all the way up to the plus mark, because otherwise, you know, the flame's tiny anyway. It's not really going to do anything if it's on anything other than full. Then on the top we've got a lock button. So lefty loosey to unlock it. We've got an ignition button. Press the button. You see it? So it's quite a crisp, fine flame, and if I take my finger off the button, it switches off. So the nice thing about this is it has that safety on it, but equally, if you're doing a lot and don't want to have thumb cramp, you press it, lock it, and then you can take your thumb off. The flame's coming to about here. And like I say, I really like this one because it's very, very defined, but it's very hot as well. So it's absolutely brilliant for doing little things, little stacking rings, obviously jump loops, small settings, claw settings and things that we were doing the other day. But you will have a fight on your hands if you're trying to solder anything that's a bit bigger. So things like ring bands that are the width of a standard spinning ring, for example. It will work, but you really do need to keep at it and keep fighting to get the heat into your piece, whereas with a bigger torch it would work really easily. So a great thing to have, especially like say if you're doing anything small and fiddly and you're concerned about where the flame's going to go, like when we're doing the claw setting, because you don't want to accidentally point at things you don't want to get hot. But not the best torch if you're only going to have one. To switch it off, you press the lock button again, and there it goes. Next up is the Dremel, and it's the same. It has a slider on one side for the size of the flame. I always have it on full. And then the reason it's a bit awkward to light is you've sort of got to flick that back bit, then press the ignition, but then the lock is on the side. So it seems really similar, but it just, something about the layout is just really fiddly, and a lot of people struggle with it, whereas they don't normally with that one. Can you see again, very, very similar flame, but what I would say is this one is a little bit more defined, a little bit crisper, but this one is also £20 more than that one. And like I said, it's harder to switch on and off. It's not as ergonomic, it's not as intuitive when you're using it. What it is very, very good for is flame painting, because the flame is so pencil thin fine that you can get some absolutely beautiful colours. So very similar to the 901, which is £9. This one's closer to 30, but it's good for some things. I don't know how to switch it off. See what I mean? Now I've got my Masterclass one, so this is a good example of how not all micro torches have micro flames. The flame on this one is a lot bigger, so I just need to unlock it. And this one has a wheel for the size of the flame, and the ignition button's down here. So I'm gonna turn the gas on, press the ignition. Oh, lock's jammed. There we go. So micro torch, but much fatter flame, much longer flame, so it's reaching a lot further. This will deal with those slightly bigger pieces, alright, compared to the other ones which struggle a little bit. And the flame on this one is more similar to the bigger torches that I'm going to show you in a second. The only reason I don't like this one as much, I don't use it very often, righty-sighty, is because you've got to refill it often. So saying the only reason this isn't my standard torch, I don't use it very often at all, is because although the flame's quite big, that means there's more gas coming out compared to the ones with the small flame, but it's the same sort of size of canister, and these you have to fill yourself with gas refills. So with something like this where it's got the larger flame, you spend a lot of time filling it up compared to these sort of torches where you just buy a can, screw the nozzle on, and you're good to go. So again, if you'd rather have something smaller size but you want the bigger flame, this could be an option for you. And this is similar to the more premium ones you'll see on the jewellery websites that are small. But for me, I prefer to have a bigger torch, which we'll move on to now. One of the reasons I started using the Go System torch, it was partly because, like I said, it's the nozzle that they sell in Kernowcraft, and I've been using Kernowcraft since I started over 20 years ago. So it was something that I'd seen, I knew about. So that gave it a little bit of a okay in my book. But I did used to use and teach with the smaller ones when I very, very, very first started out. And what was happening was I was traveling to lots of different workshops, and every time I opened the boot of my car, I was absolutely convinced I could smell gas. So I was convinced that things were leaking, getting knocked during transport, and I was just worrying about it all the time. Whereas with these, they're self-sealing. So when you're not using it, you unscrew it, take the nozzle off, there you go. And there's no way it can leak because the nozzle's off. This is completely sealed, so unless you literally punctured it, it's not going to leak or do anything nasty. So good to transport and store. You can get lots and lots of different blowtorch brands and these sort of sizes, and there's a few which I'll show you in a bit. But one of the reasons the Go System one is good is because it comes with a whole range of nozzles, and all you do is line it up with your can on a hard surface. Line it up with your can, twist it on, screw that down, and then it's ready to use. And again, it will come with instructions, so it tells you about all the different washers and things that you should check before each use, just to check that nothing's corroded and going to cause any issues. But super, super easy. The one downside with this particular nozzle is it doesn't have its own ignition button like the small ones and like some of the other bigger torches. So I'm going to have to light it manually. I normally use an electric lighter. So this is my little electric sparker, and normally I would turn it on, and then when you slide this up, a little electric arc appears, and you use that spark to light the torch. So it's a nice safe way of doing it, but unfortunately this is broken recently, so a new one on its way. So in the meantime, I'm going to use a lighter. So not ideal, but a lot of the strikers that you get, the flint strikers, I might have actually thrown mine out, really struggle to light these sort of torches for whatever reason. So I'm going to do it with this. It's a long nozzled one, and it's going to be lefty loosey to get the gas going. Need to get nice and close, click, and there's the flame. So it's a softer flame, it's not as defined as the small ones, a little bit bigger, and it's coming to about here. But for me, it's the perfect combination between a defined flame and one that's a bit bigger for heating larger elements. The only time this nozzle starts to struggle a little bit is if we are casting, and then I've had some success. You normally can bully the metal to melt and do some casting with this torch, but generally speaking it will struggle, and you would make your life so much easier if you're using something with a bigger, well, not even necessarily a bigger flame, just more heat behind it, but that heat needs to be covering a larger surface area as well. So I'm going to show you my casting torch in a little bit, but like I say, for everything else, absolutely love this torch. It gets really bad reviews online because they sell them in B&Q as well, and it gets awful reviews. And even on the Jewellery Metalsmith UK page, a lot of people complain about it, but the complaints always seem to be because they haven't read the instructions. So when you first light torches like this, if you tip them at a sharp angle, they will flare. It's just the way they work. So you just need to keep them more upright. You can hold it at this sort of angle, completely fine. As soon as you're doing this, not so good. I think that just comes back to whatever torch you decide to go with, make sure you read the instruction manual. Make sure you understand what you're working with, you know how to set it up, you know how to light it, you know how to maintain it and check it that it's working properly, and you know how to use it. Because like I say, they are very clear on the instructions on this that it will flare if you do that within the first few minutes of use. So just don't do that. I don't like heating things straight down anyway, because I find if you're a little bit off in terms of where you're hitting your piece with the flame, you're more likely to miss everything. Whereas if you hit everything on a shallower angle, it tends to heat everything up nice and evenly, and just works a lot better and a lot quicker for me. So I really like these. Perfect torch for me. Next up, we have this one. So Go System again, but just a much bigger nozzle, and this was the first one that I got when I wanted to do casting. And as you can see, I always have trouble lighting it. This one I've always had a bit of trouble lighting, and because it's spluttering like that, it would suggest that So if I take this off, this was cold when I started touching it. See there's a little hole in there where the gas comes out. Sometimes things like that can get blocked or they're a bit too tight. So it just needs a little bit of maintenance. But the other reason that I really like Go System is because if I've ever had problems with any of the nozzles in the past, and there's been a few occasions, and it's nearly always been because students have done something they weren't meant to do with them. Nothing dangerous, but just that means the torches don't work properly anymore. And Go System's customer service has always been absolutely amazing, and they've always sent me a new one for free in next day delivery. Just absolutely astounding customer service. So I'm not going to bother returning this one because, like I said, I never ever use it, which is partly why it needs some maintenance. But I know if I wanted to that they would sort me out because they're so great. Next up I've got this one. It's on one of my Go System cans, but it is actually a camping gas brand. This is the one that I did a little review of in my Instagram profile. It's in one of my pinned videos right at the top of my profile if anyone wants to check it out. The reason it's on the Go System can is because the camping gas one ran out and I didn't replace it because I normally always use my Go System cans. So again, if you read the instructions, they'll say that you can only use the nozzle with the same brand of can. That's so that the manufacturers can guarantee that it's the right combination and you're going to be safe. So it's just to make sure it is exactly the same screw fitting and all the rest of it before using it. But otherwise, the ignition on this broke, so I'm going to light it manually. You can see how much bigger the flame is. Very powerful. A bit too much for me for most jobs. Potentially for casting. But even with casting, I was finding it was just a bit too... It's big and it makes a lot of noise, but comparatively there isn't actually as much heat behind it, weirdly. So yeah, it doesn't get used. For me it's just too much, not that suitable. I thought it was alright when I did the initial review. It's alright for sort of, you know, annealing bigger bits if you want to, but if you're doing fine fiddly work, although in saying that, the flame does go a bit smaller. It's still quite spluttery, it's not as defined as the other ones. So not my favourite. Next up I've got this one. It's Bond is the brand of the nozzle, but it's on Parkland butane gas, but they did come as a set, and this is the cheapest of the cheap. I know a few people own them where it's about £11 and that includes 4 cans of gas. So very cheap for the price. Turn it on, mission. And it's alright, it's a little bit spluttery. So it's not as defined as the other ones. So it's looking alright on camera. The flame's coming all the way over here. But for me again, I just find if I'm trying to heat up a specific part of my jewellery, like when we're doing the claw setting, it's very easy to overheat and accidentally catch bits that you're trying to avoid, just because the flame is a bit softer, it's quite long. So let's say for the price, it's alright. But it's just, I think you're going to make life harder for yourself because it's harder to control where, you know, what you're doing with it, where you're pointing it. Whereas this one, you're looking at about £15 for the nozzle, roughly £12–15. It's the cheapest nozzle that Go System do, but it's my favourite. And then it's about a £5 for the can, but the cans last for absolutely ages. And these, if you look after them, last for years and years and years without having a problem. But like I say, I just much prefer the flame on this one. You can see the difference. Crisper. It doesn't come out quite as far, so it's a lot easier to control exactly what bit you're trying to heat. It's a lot easier to avoid bits that you don't want to heat, but it's still big enough to get heat through even chunkier pieces. So for me that's preferable to the one I just showed you. That's the Go System Fine Tech again. In terms of the gases used, butane is the most readily available gas. This is the one that you can get as gas refills in the tobacconist stands. You can easily pick up in camping stores, DIY stores, places like that. I was always told that butane propane mix was a better heat for jewellery silversmithing, but there's now an argument going around saying that actually, although the thought was that propane burned at a hotter heat than butane, that's not true, and actually the output of heat is the same no matter which of these two gases that you use. So whether that's true or not, I don't know, but what I do know is that butane freezes and stops working at a higher temperature than propane does. So when it's cold, this will start spluttering and stop working as well quite a bit before this one will, because the propane keeps it working a bit longer. But even then, if it is really cold, so now that we're coming into winter, we've had a couple of really cold days, and I work outside in a shed, quite often I will take my cans inside, or I'll store them inside the house rather than keeping them in the shed, because I don't hold that many cans at any one time, and it just keeps them from getting too cold. But normally, even if they have got too cold, say if they are in the shed, if you then put a radiator on and the room comes up to temperature, quite quickly the gas will come back up to temperature and it will work fine. But it's just worth noting that if you're having problems, things are refusing to light, or they're being a bit spluttery, if it's not that you're tipping it, it might be just that the room is really, really cold and the gas is struggling to do its thing. So next up I have the Beast, and this has a mixes of gas in it, including propane. So again, this is another Go System brand one, but this is a bit different. So this is Pro Max, or sometimes it gets called MAP gas, and it's the hottest commercially available gas that you can get your hands on. So it's a mix of different gases, and this is the one that I use when casting things. So it is really a beast. No good for soldering. This is just for casting. If you're heating metal in a crucible, and you need to get an awful lot of heat in there and have things heat up and melt easily, this will do the job. Far too big for anything other than that. And it's always very ferocious every time you light it. When I did that little jump, even if I had used my arc electric lighter from a distance, I still jump every time I light this torch. Just coming back to Go System and the customer service again, when I first got this can, because these cans are about £25 compared to about £5 for the normal ones. So I spent a lot of money on the can, and then I spent a lot of money on a nozzle, because the nozzles for these cans are more expensive as well. They do not mix and match with these. They have a different attachment, cross-thread system to attach them. And the one that I bought, the first time I used it to try and cast, I managed to melt it, which is not good. And the reason being is when you're casting in a crucible, you've got this bowl that you're heating into, so all the flame heat is bouncing back towards the torch, and most torches come with this little plastic sealant on there, and because all this heat was bouncing back, it melted. So again, emailed them, asked for a little bit of advice, told them what I'd been up to, and they were amazing. That's when they recommended this particular nozzle. I can't remember exactly what it is, but if anybody wants to know, just put a comment in the post and I'll let you know. Partly because there's no plastic components on there to melt, and even though they said that safety wise it was fine, because that doesn't affect the actual connection with the gas can. It's just, it doesn't look good, especially if you're teaching. You don't want to hand the blowtorch to somebody that has molten bits all over it. But he said this was the best one for what I wanted to do, partly because there was no plastic elements, and partly because the flame was defined enough, but wide enough to cover the area. It wasn't as, I forgot what they're called, a swizzle flame. Some of the flames are designed to wrap around the thing that you're heating rather than heat direct at it. This one was specifically designed to heat straight at the thing you're pointing at and get it up to a nice hot temperature. So fab for casting, apart from the fact you get very hot. In a little bit I'm going back over to one of the studios where I work, and over there are some professional torch setups, so I'm going to show you those. You can see the difference in the flame. I'm going to take this with me because I keep meaning to show some of my students this one because they've been asking. And also show you how to refill the small torches. But yeah, just let me know what you think. Let me know what torches you use. Portable ones, because I say I know I do use more professional setups, but for myself, partly for space reasons and partly because they're a lot easier to maintain, I prefer these type of torches than the great big jewellery silversmithing ones that a lot of other jewellers use. But yeah, if you've got any portable torches that you like, let me know in the comments and let me know the pros and cons that you find with them. So here is a professional civet torch, and these are the ones you normally see in jewellery workshops. So it's the torch head attached to a hose, which is attached to a full-size can of gas. This one's propane. And this is what's considered the professional kit to use, but I'm just going to show you it lit, because the thing with these is, apart from the price, they're a lot more money, but as you can see, they require an awful lot of space. And also they need a lot of maintenance, so these hoses need checking regularly because they do corrode. You need to check all your connections, and you need to look after the cans of gas because they can really affect your insurance, because obviously that's a lot more gas compared to the little handhelds. To light it, I've got a little electric striker, so this is similar to the one that I would normally use to light my little handheld torch at home, but this is a bench-based one rather than one that you hold and click. To use it, you turn the gas lefty-loosey, touch it down. Touch it down till it lights, turn the gas up, and there we go. So as you can see, it's got a nice crisp flame on it, but the flame is very, very, very similar to my Go Systems Fine-Tech flame. The only difference is it does go a bit, wrong way, it does go a bit bigger. But it still doesn't quite go big enough for most casting applications. So if I wanted to cast with this, I would need to change the torch head over. So actually, when we're soldering, we only normally have it about this size anyway. And this size of flame is the size that is extremely similar to the Go System Fine-Tech torch, which is why I love those ones so much, because they don't require all the maintenance, all the upkeep. They're really easy to look after. They're not going to affect your insurance in the same way. I mean, some policies, if you're working in the house, you do still need to check, but they're more of a DIY size torch, so they're less likely to affect your insurance compared to having one of these massive, massive cans of gas on your property, which can certainly affect things. And like I say, although you have to check your connections on the little torch, it's so much easier compared to having to maintain all these sort of things. And when you need to change the nozzles on the portable gas cans, it's so much easier as well, because you just screw one on and screw one off. With these, it's a bit harder to change the torch head over. So, not dissing them, they're great torches, I just don't think they're essential.